By the grace of Allah, by the grace of Allah, even the darkest night will end, and the sun will rise and shine, and the sun will rise and shine, by the grace of Allah.
الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الصلاة والسلام عليك يا رسول الله وعلى آلك وأصحابك يا حبيب الله الصلاة والسلام عليك يا نبي الله وعلى آلك وأصحابك يا نور الله. My dear viewers of Madani Channel, welcome back to our program. Welcome back to our morning show. Goes by the name of Rise and Shine. Alhamdulillah, each and every single day we begin by listening to the beautiful verses of the Holy Quran. Sallu ala al-Habib sallallahu ta'ala ala Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi wa sallam.
A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Qul a'udhu bi rabbin nas malikin nas ilahin nas min sharril waswasil khannas الذي يوسوس في صدور الناس الذي يوسوس في صدور الناس من الجنة والناس صدق الله العظيم.
Each and every single day we have our daily reminder as well as our daily hadith sharif. But before these, my dear viewers, beginning the program, after having listened to the verses of the glorious Quran, we listen to a na'at of Rasulullah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi wa sallam. Sallu ala al-Habib sallallahu ta'ala ala Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi wa sallam.
Sallallahu alayka ya Rasulallah wa sallam alayka ya Habiballah. وہ کمال حسن حضور ہے، وہ کمال حسن حضور ہے کہ گمان نقص جہاں نہیں، وہ کمال حسن حضور ہے کہ گمان نقص جہاں نہیں، یہی پھول خار سے دور ہے، یہی پھول خار سے دور ہے، یہی شمع ہے کہ بخدا خدا کا یہی غید نہیں اور کوئی مافر مکر بخدا خدا کا یہی غید نہیں اور کوئی مافر مکر جو وہاں سے ہو یہی آ کے ہو جو وہاں سے ہو یہی آ کے ہو جو یہاں نہیں تو وہاں نہیں صلو علیہ وآلہ صلو علیہ وآلہ تیرے آگے یوں گئے دبے لچے فسحا رب کے بڑے بڑے تیرے آگے یوں گئے دبے لچے فسحا رب کے بڑے بڑے کوئی جانے منہ میں زبان نہیں کوئی جانے منہ میں زبان نہیں بلکہ جسم میں جان نہیں وہ کمال حسن حضور ہے کہ گمان نقص جگہ نہیں یہی پھول خار سے دور ہے یہی شمع ہے کہ دعا نہیں کروں مد اگلے دول عذاب پڑے اس بلا میں میری بلا کروں مد اگلے دول عذاب پڑے اس بلا میں گدا ہوں اپنے حبیب کا میں گدا ہوں اپنے کریم کا میں گدا ہوں اپنے کریم کا میں گدا ہوں اپنے کریم کا میرا دین پارا نہیں صلو علیہ وآلہ صلو علیہ وآلہ وہ کمال حسن حضور ہے کہ گمان نقص جگہ نہیں یہی پھول خار سے دور ہے یہی شمع ہے کہ دھواں
MashaAllah, MashaAllah. Sallu ala al-Habib, sallallahu ta'ala ala Muhammad, sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi wasallam, the beauty of the greatest of mankind, Rasulullah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi wasallam. And my dear viewers, it's said that Allah Hazrat, the reason for reciting or the reason for writing this kalam, my dear viewers, Madani Channel, Allah Hazrat, Imam Ahli Sunnat, Mujaddid of the deen of Rasulullah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi wasallam, that he was once asked to write praise or write poetry in praise of Nan Para. This person, he was some sort of governor, and other poets, they were praising him, and then he would give them gifts, and he would respect and honor them in his court, he would welcome them. So then the people of Allah Hazrat, they said, why don't you also, write some poetry in praise of him? And then Allah Hazrat writes, but what does he write? He writes, wa kamali husn huzur hai. He writes about the beauty of Rasulullah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi wasallam. And then in the last whereabouts is, he continues to mention the beauty, the greatness of Rasulullah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi wasallam. And then for those people that had asked him to praise this person by the name of Nanpara, he replied, and he addressing, he said that my deen, my religion is not para in nan. He's basically, it's called to change something, my dear viewers. To what he's done is nan para. Nan means a bread. This was his person's name. It was nan para. So he split it into two words: nan, which means a bread, and then para, which means a portion, a part, a morsel, you can say, of bread. So he has changed the words around. He said, my deen is not para inan. My deen, my religion is not just a piece of bread where it could be bought, my dear viewers. This is his life, his words, his efforts, his ink. Everything was only for Rasulullah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi wasallam. It's not something that could be bought with the world. And it's beautiful, really, the love Allah Hazrat radiallahu ta'ala anhu possessed for Rasulullah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi wasallam. Now, alhamdulillah, speaking about Allah Hazrat radiallahu ta'ala anhu was a great individual, my dear viewers. He was a mujaddid of the previous century. We mustn't forget this. He goes by the name of Allah Hazrat. His name is not Allah Hazrat, it's a title, Allah Hazrat. But there's also another individual, and somebody I would like to speak about today, mostly his family, his parents especially. The individual I wish to speak about today, his mother goes by the title of Khair. And really, when I read this, it reminded me of Hazrat Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu ta'ala anhu. His mother was also given the title of Khair. His mother's name was Fatima radiallahu ta'ala anha. His father was Sayyid Musa rahimallahu ta'ala radiallahu ta'ala anhu. And his father's title, or he became known as Jangi Dost. Who is this person I'm referring to? This person I'm referring to is none other than that person who we know as the Sultan of the Sheikhs. That person we know as Ghous Pak, Ghous Azam. That person we know as the Peer or the Sheikh of Gyarmi. The Gyarmi Peer or Gyarmi Sheikh. Some people would have heard of all these terms, and many of us would have heard of Hazrat Ghous Pak, Abdul Qadir Jilani, radiallahu ta'ala anhu. This is the individual, more his parents, I would like to speak about today, because this is really, and the majority, I think, that would be watching would be parents. And this is a huge lesson for everybody, not just parents, non-parents too, but especially parents, because it shows how the actions of parents affect their children. And this we also learn from the Quran, which inshallah we shall come to hear about. Now, it's said about the father, Hazrat Sayyid Musa rahimallahu ta'ala alayhi, that he was once sitting by or even walking by a stream or some sort of river, and he was feeling hungry, he was feeling hungry, my dear viewers of Madani Channel. What happens is he sets his eyes on a apple which is actually flowing through the river, flowing past, or this stream, and he takes hold of this apple. And then, immediately he begins to eat this apple, my dear viewers of Madani Channel. He begins to eat this apple. Now, when a person is extremely hungry and he has something in front of him, then, he just, without thinking much, he'll place it in his mouth and he'll eat it. Especially if you're in the middle of nowhere. You think, there's nothing wrong with having a apple. It's a fruit. And it is in the middle of nowhere. There's nobody that lives around here. So you can't say it's such and such person's. So let's pick it up and eat it. So this is what he does. He picks it up and he eats this apple. Now, upon having eaten it, when a person becomes satiated, when he's now eaten, now he thinks differently. It helps him think better. So upon eating it, then he begins to think, and he begins to become worried that I have just eaten this apple, but where did this apple come from? Who owns this apple? What if it belongs to somebody and I ate their apple without their permission? Was this apple then halal for me on the day of judgment? If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala questions me, will I be punished? So all of these things are running through his mind, my dear viewers of Madani Channel. So then he thinks, I must go in search for the owner of this apple. Let's see who this apple belongs to. Who is the owner of this apple? Is there anybody nearby? So he says he continues on that same route, or route as some would say. And he comes across a grand house. And outside of this grand house there is a beautiful, huge apple tree with many apples on it. He asks the local people, he thinks, this must be the place where this apple fell down from. It must be whoever owns this house, it must be his. So what does he do? He asks the people, or those houses which are surrounding his house, he asks them, about this person. And they say that this house belongs to Hazrat Abdullah Sawma'i radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. Hazrat Abdullah Sawma'i was a great sheikh of his time. He's no ordinary individual. He himself was a great sheikh of his time. He said about Hazrat Abdullah Sawma'i radiyallahu ta'ala anhu that he was mustajab al-da'wat. That whatever he would ask for, whatever he would pray, whenever he would perform any supplication, it would immediately be accepted. And it was he possessed such authority, such a rank, that if he was, obviously, the shuyukh, the people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, their love and hatred and anger is all for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If they love somebody, they love them for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If they hate them for the sake of Allah ta'ala. So it's said that if he was to, become angry at somebody, undoubtedly it would be due to a shari reason. That person would be inflicted with some sort of hardship. And if he would be happy with somebody, then that person would be showered with blessings and fortune, my dear viewers of Madani Channel. This was this great individual, Hazrat Abdullah Sawma'i radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. So when this person, Hazrat Sayyid Musa radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, the father, by the way, this is the father of Hazrat Ghous Pak Abdul Qadir Jilani. This was before Hazrat Ghous Pak, Hazrat Abdul Qadir Jilani radiyallahu ta'ala anhu was born. So when his father, he realized that this is the person, he thought, I must approach him. I must approach him and I must tell him what has happened, that I have eaten, I have consumed his apple without his permission. So now I must seek forgiveness from him. Please forgive me, let me, give you some sort of pay, let me pay you back, let me give you some sort of recompense. So what does he do? He approaches this farmer, Hazrat Abdullah Sawma'i radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. And he describes to him the incident which took place. I was walking by, I was feeling very, very hungry. I didn't have anything to eat. Suddenly I saw this apple. Without thinking, I just ate it. And please forgive me. You have many apples. The person was a farmer. You have many apples. Please forgive me. Is there anything I can do? So this farmer, he must have been shocked, really, if you think about it. Imagine somebody was to come to you and say, look, that apple that you dropped, and I found it all the way down there, went all the way down the street, and I came across it, and I ate it. You would say to him, yeah, it's cool, don't worry about it. It's fine. It's only an apple. I've got many apples. But what does this person say? This farmer, the owner of that apple tree, he says, you want forgiveness? If you want me to forgive you, then you must serve me for 12 years. Allahu Akbar. Dear viewers, he says, if you want me to forgive you, then you must serve me for 12 years. And then what happens? Inshallah Azzawajal, we shall come to here. First, my dear viewers, we shall be going to our daily reminder. Let's move to our daily reminder. Sallu ala al-Habib sallallahu ta'ala ala Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi wa sallam.
By the grace of Allah, by the grace of Allah.
Sallu ala al-Habib sallallahu ta'ala ala Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. My dear Islam brothers, today's piece of advice is taken from the book of Shaykh Tariqat Amil Sunnat Damat Barakatum al-Aliyah, Fazan Sunnat, in the chapter Excellence of Hunger. Hazrat Sayyidina Abdullah bin Mubarak rahmatullah alayhi narrates that a wise man once chose only 4 pieces of advice from 40,000. What are them 4 pieces of advice? Number 1, do not have confidence on every woman in every issue. Number 2, never rely on your wealth. Number 3, do not overburden your belly more than what it can carry. And do not run after the knowledge which does not benefit you. My dear Islam, just think for a moment. These are the pieces of advice which we should be taking aboard. And someone who has considered this advice from 4 pieces of advice from 40,000, imagine how valuable these pearls are going to be if you just reflect over them. Today, we have confidence over every woman, over every issue, and this should not be the case. And never rely on our wealth. And this is a fact of life today. So many people who consider themselves, they're relying on their wealth, they're thinking they've got money, they can do anything, they can do everything. But we've seen examples in front of us. Those who had properties, who had land, who had wealth, and with one punishment, or with one such movements of the earth, has taken all their property, all their land into the ground. Or with one such great big wave hitting, a tornado hitting and destroying all this property, all this land and the wealth. Many people who are rich, wealthy, their property, their businesses have gone down and they've lost everything. So my dear brothers, never rely on your wealth, and do not burden your belly with more than what it can carry. And it's a fact today. Today, the sad thing is we burden our bellies. We eat as much as we can to such an extent, and then we find ourselves being in a condition of illness, in a condition of problems. Today, many people have burdened their bellies so much, they barely can walk. So my dear Islamers, when it comes to the matters of food, try to eat wisely, try to eat a little, and that can be sufficient for us. And we should try to eat that much which is sufficient for us to have a straight back. And don't overburden yourself. Don't just eat as a form of a habit or as a form of timing. Like we do today, we eat in the morning, we eat in the afternoon, we eat at night, we eat in between whenever we have time. So try not to overburden your belly with food. And do not run after the knowledge that will not benefit you. Today, people are try to gain information, try to get that knowledge which will not benefit us at all. And before we know it, we are gone, we have left the dunya. Try to get that type of knowledge which will benefit us in this dunya, the knowledge of deen. Try to seek that type of knowledge which will benefit us in being successful, not just in this dunya, also in the grave and also in the hereafter. This was an advice given by a pious person from 40,000 piece of advice. So you can see the value of these. Try to take these advice aboard and reflect over them, and inshaAllah these types of advice will make us successful. And the advice of the pious people rahimahumullah is always a means of us reflecting and becoming better, inshaAllah. So my dear Islam brothers, these 4 great pieces of advice, try to take them aboard, and inshaAllah try to live according to these type of pieces of advice, and inshaAllah we will be successful in the dunya and the akhirah. Ameen bijahin nabil ameen sallallahu alayhi wa sallam.
By the grace of Allah, by the grace of Allah.
Sallu ala al-Habib sallallahu ta'ala ala Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi wa sallam. Dear viewers of Madani Channel, you're watching Rise and Shine. Now, I was thinking, subhanallah, we are speaking about the father of Hazrat Ghous Pak, Hazrat Abdul Qadir Jilani radhiyallahu ta'ala anhu, and him meeting the farmer, the great sheikh, the great saint, Hazrat Abdullah Sawma'i radhiyallahu ta'ala anhu. Now, my dear viewers of Madani Channel, imagine his morning. He was waking up to a normal day, rise and shine, and then he comes across this apple, he eats the apple, he thinks, what have I done? I must seek forgiveness. And this person who was a great sheikh, what does he say to him? He says, if you want me to forgive you, then you must serve me for, subhanallah, my dear viewers, it's not one day. Because what's an apple worth? Not one day, not 1 week, not 1 month. Not even 1 month would be too much for us to become a servant of somebody. 1 month, Allahu Akbar, no way, we would say. 1 year, we would never imagine something. It would be, you would consider it ridiculous for somebody to ask. But this individual, he says, not 1 week, not 1 month, not 1 year, but 12 years. This is like half of our lifetime, my dear viewers. Really. This is like half of our life, or this is, you're asking for the rest of my life, 12 years of my life, you're asking me to serve you. This is what this was. So you can imagine how he must react, but he does not react like that. He accepts it. He says, okay, yes, I will serve you for 12 years. My dear viewers, he is so adamant, he's so certain, so sure that he wishes, he possesses such fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that he will be held accountable on the Day of Judgment, that he is ready to give 12 years of his life serving somebody else to be forgiven for eating that 1 apple. And this is what he does. Slowly time goes by. Weeks turn into months, turn into years, 10 years, 11 years, 12 years. Now when the 12 years later, when 12 years have gone, again he says to the farmer, my 12 years are finished now. Have you forgiven me? Will you forgive me? The farmer says, not yet. The farmer says, if you wish for me to forgive you, then I want you to marry my daughter. My daughter is such a lady, such a woman who is blind from the eyes. She is not capable of listening from the ears, meaning she is deaf, you can say. My daughter, she is blind, she is deaf, her hands do not work, are disabled. and so are her feet. Now imagine this. This is like, you want me to marry somebody whose hands and feet do not work, she cannot see, she's blind from the eyes and deaf from the ears, and you want me to marry her? It's like, the rest of my life also going to prison. Really, just imagine this. But how does he react? What is his reply? Fine, that's okay. And he says also 2 more years of servitude. You must serve me for another 2 more years also. He says, okay. And then the nikah, the marriage ceremony takes place. He's been serving this man for 12 years, but not has he seen his daughter even once yet. Subhanallah. The time comes for the marriage ceremony. The nikah takes place. After they are married, he enters the room. He enters the room in which his daughter is. And when he goes into this room, he sees somebody greeting him with salam. He hears somebody greeting him with the salam. And he's shocked. This person is, her eyes are fine. She's able to hear him. Her hands, they seem absolutely fine. She's able to walk. She's beautiful. He's thinking, maybe I've come to the wrong place. There must be some mistake. So he goes back out and again he approaches Hazrat Abdullah Sawma'i. Hazrat Abdullah Sawma'i says that girl, do not worry, that girl is in actual fact your wife, the one you have married. He says, I thought you said she was blind, she was deaf. He says, yes, she is blind. Her eyes have never seen, she has never set eyes upon a non-mahram. She is deaf, yes, she has never heard anything which is haram. She has never listened to anything which was wrong. She has never listened to music or those things which are prohibited. Her hands are disabled, meaning she's never set hands on any non-mahram man. Her feet are disabled, meaning she will never step or act contrary to her husband's wishes. My dear viewers of Madani Channel, this boy at the time who later morphed into a man, he spent 12 years serving somebody and then married somebody who he thought to be disabled, blind, deaf. On top of that, another 2 years he served him. 14 years of his life. All in order to be forgiven for eating 1 apple. This was the husband. And who was the wife? The wife was such a woman who had never set eyes upon a non-mahram. She had never heard or listened to anything which was contrary to the Sharia. She never placed her hands, she never did anything wrong with her hands, my dear viewers. Her hands never touched a non-mahram. This was the wife. This husband, great husband, and this great wife, these are both the parents of Ghous Pak Hazrat Abdul Qadir Jilani radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. Let's go to our daily hadith sharif, and then inshallah we shall hear a few more lessons we learn from today's story. Sallu ala al-Habib sallallahu ta'ala ala Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi wa sallam.
By the grace of Allah, by the grace of Allah.
Sallu ala al-Habib sallallahu ta'ala ala Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Dear viewers of Rise and Shine, we are all aware of the importance of making dua in light of various ayat and ahadith that we've heard in this regard. Can we imagine how blissful it would be to make dua through the words of supplication used by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Subhanallah, cited in Sahih Bukhari, narrated on the authority of Sayyidina Anas bin Malik radiyallahu ta'ala an, that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam used to supplicate in these words: Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-ajzi wal-kasali wal-jubni wal-harami. That, O Allah Azza wa Jal, I seek refuge from you from helplessness. I seek refuge from you from laziness, from cowardice, and from feeble old age. وَأَعُوذُ بِكَ مِنْ فِتْنَةِ الْمَحْيَا وَالْمَمَاتِ. And I seek refuge from you from afflictions of this life and death. وَأَعُوذُ بِكَ مِنْ عَذَابِ الْقَبْرِ. And I seek refuge from you from the punishment of the grave. Subhanallah, what a beautiful dua. What is one asking in this dua is a means of attaining a peaceful life and a peaceful death as well. As one is asking to be safeguarded from dependency, from helplessness. He's been asking, he's supplicating to be saved from such laziness that will deter him from carrying out good deeds. And then from all pains and sorrows of life and death, ultimately deliverance from the punishment of the grave. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept this beautiful dua in our right. Ameen bijahin nabil ameen. Sallu ala al-Habib sallallahu ta'ala ala Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam.
By the grace of Allah, by the grace of Allah.
Sallu ala al-Habib sallallahu ta'ala ala Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi wa sallam. My dear viewers of Rise and Shine, alhamdulillah azza wa jal, we are speaking about the parents of Ghous Pak Hazrat Abdul Qadir Jilani radhiyallahu ta'ala anhu. Now there are many lessons to be learnt, my dear viewers. One is parenthood. In fact, this is possibly the most important lesson, parenthood, because the mother of Hazrat Ghous Pak, Hazrat Abdul Qadir Jilani, she was a Hafiza, meaning she had preserved, she had memorized 17, 18 parts of the glorious Quran. She had memorized these. And it said that whilst she was pregnant with her child, Hazrat Ghous Pak, Hazrat Abdul Qadir Jilani radhiyallahu ta'ala an, she would regularly recite those paras, she would regularly recite those parts of the Quran which she had memorized. And this is something to take note of, because even in this day and age, my dear viewers, when a woman is pregnant, when a woman is having a child, my dear viewers, has a child in her stomach, then the language they speak, the child hears it. Yes, he may not understand it, but he hears it. So this language then becomes familiar to him. The voices of the mother, the mother's voice, the mother's sound becomes familiar to the child. The sound of the father also becomes familiar to the child. And this is why the child is immediately from birth so closely attached to both the mother and the father. Also the emotions of the mother. These all have an impact on the child, and the state, even the mental state of the child, even whilst the child is yet in his or her mother's stomach. It has a huge effect. And it said that the mother of Hazrat Ghous Pak Abdul Qadir Jilani radhiyallahu ta'ala anha, she would recite the Quran she had memorized by heart. So much so that when Hazrat Abdul Qadir Jilani radhiyallahu ta'ala anhu was born, and later he was sent to the madrasa, his teacher asked him to recite. So he recited Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, and then he continued to recite Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, and he continued Ar-Rahmanir Rahim Maliki Yawmiddin. He completed the entire Surah Fatiha. Because he was reciting, his teacher allowed him to continue and continue. He begins Alif Lam Mim Dhalikul Kitabu La Rayba Fihi Hudal Lil Muttaqeen, and he continues and continues. He has completed the first. Then he goes on to the second part. He completes the entire second part. He goes on to the third part. He completes the entire third part. Fourth part, fifth part, 10th part, 11th, 15th part, 16th, 17th, 18th, and he says, this is all I have memorized. His teacher says, how is it you have memorized all this? This is the first day you have come to the masjid. The first day you have come to learn how to recite the Quran. And he says that I just remember when I was a child, when I was in my mother's stomach, my mother would recite these parts of the Quran. She had memorized these, and she would regularly recite this Quran. So as she would regularly recite the Quran, whilst I was in my mother's stomach, I would be listening to the Quran. And because I had heard it so many times, I had memorized this Quran. My dear viewers, what a great miracle. Possibly we've all heard of this. But what do we learn from this? We learn that the actions of a mother, especially during her pregnancy, have a huge impact on their child. It has a huge, huge impact on their child. It can completely change a child's life. If the parents were to be always arguing, then this is what would be embedded on, within their minds, within their hearts. There's always argument, shouting, etc. But when things are soft between the husband and wife, when the wife is emotionally strong, happy, full of joy, then the child also feels happy. But when the wife is anxious, feeling depressed, then the child is going to be born in such a manner which is going to mentally affect the child and will be more prone to anxiety. So my dear viewers of Madani Channel, this is something we must really, really think about. What are our actions as parents? This is whilst the child is in the stomach. Then imagine after delivery, how our actions will affect our children. Perform good actions and they will positively impact your children. And this should be our aim each and every single day. That we have a positive, a good impact on our children, and we need to question ourselves, what is our effect on our children? My dear viewers of Madani Channel, we will go to our next segment, which is a fruit segment, inshallah azza wa jal, and then we shall continue. Sallu ala al-habib, sallallahu ta'ala ala Muhammad, sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi wa sallam.
By the grace of Allah, by the grace of Allah.
The kiwi fruit, consuming fruits and vegetables of all kinds, is associated with a reduced risk of heart disease, diabetes, cancer, and many other conditions. Consumption of plant foods like the kiwi, this decreases the risk of obesity too. The kiwi fruit, often shortened as we know to be called kiwi in many parts of the world, contains many vitamins or vitamins, as some would say, and minerals. Kiwi fruit is rich in vitamin C, vitamin E, vitamin A. It contains dietary fiber, potassium, phosphorus, magnesium, and copper. It has a remarkable ability to remove excess sodium from the body, which is good for the average person who eats too much salt in his foods. Kiwi is also rich in antioxidants and digestive enzymes. The kiwi fruit should be eaten immediately once cooked, as these enzymes make the fruit go soggy. Collagen, the support system of the skin, is reliant on vitamin C. The vitamin is an essential nutrient and antioxidant. It helps prevent damage caused by the sun, by pollution, especially in this day and age, and smooths wrinkles on your beautiful face. It also improves overall skin texture, my dear viewers. Not only can kiwi fruits provide an extra boost to our immune system, but rather they can also help us to manage our blood pressure. Yes, studies have found that the bioactive substances in 3 kiwis a day can lower your blood pressure more than 1 apple a day. Meaning, it takes 3 kiwis to do the job of 1 apple. Allahu Akbar. Long term, this may also mean a lower risk for conditions that can be caused by high blood pressure, like strokes and also sadly heart attacks. The fiber and potassium in kiwis supports heart health. An increase in potassium intake along with a decrease in sodium intake can help reduce the risk of cardiovascular disease. It has been stated that those who consumed 4,069 milligrams of potassium per day had a 49% lower risk of death from ischemic heart disease compared with those who consumed less potassium. But dear viewers, many benefits in eating the kiwi fruit. Improve your health, aid your body by eating kiwis. They are delicious.
By the grace of Allah, by the grace of Allah.
Sallu ala al-Habib sallallahu ta'ala ala Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi wa sallam. I bet many of you are thinking, wow, you know, they look delicious. To be honest, I've never actually had kiwi juice. That's one thing I've not had as of yet. Although I try to have juices of many things, my dear viewers, but that's inshallah, I'm going to add that to my list, kiwi juice. Now, the kiwi fruit generally I love, mashallah, beautiful. Kiwi is very, very nice. And at the same time, my dear viewers, mashallah, you know, those pictures, it just, whenever I do see a picture on the screen of, mashallah, our segment, it really does encourage me to eat that fruit. You should also make the intention, my dear viewers, to eat fruits. Yes, you should try to have your 5 a day. It is good for your health, and we should, especially in this day and age, you know, we are always eating junk, as we would call it in the United Kingdom. We call it junk, meaning junk food. For example, chocolates, crisps, and cakes, and you know, burgers and pizzas, all these sort of things. All the time we are eating, and these are detrimental to our health. Although we may be addicted to it, my dear viewers, but try to keep that on the, you know, try to decrease your intake of such foods and increase especially your fruit, you know, your natural. And the best I think type is, you know, if you also grow some in your garden, my dear viewers. Yes, there are many fruits even within the United Kingdom you can grow, and those, you know, living in America, overseas, you know, where you get good weather, there's so many more fruits you can grow at your own home, and that is, you know, easily the best type of food, my dear viewers, you can have. Now today's topic, my dear viewers, we're speaking about the parents of Ghous Pak, the impact. And we even learned this from the Quran, as I mentioned previously in Surah Kahf, my dear viewers. The story, the long, beautiful story. Honestly, those who have not read it, they must go and read the story of Hazrat Khizr and Hazrat Musa alayhi salatu wasalam. Hazrat Musa asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ya Allah, is there anybody that's more knowledgeable than me? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told him that yes, a person by the name of Khizr is also a prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. So Hazrat Musa says, you know, I wish to go see him. Where is he? He goes to find Hazrat Khizr. He perform some strange acts, some very, very strange things. They ride a ship together and he places a hole into the ship. You're thinking, wow, what sort of person is this? And this person is supposed to be a pious person, a knowledgeable person, somebody who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has granted wisdom to, and he's doing such acts. And then, he goes and slays a boy. So he's thinking, what is this person doing? And then the third thing he does is he fixes a wall. He fixes a wall. So again he questions him. Why is it you are doing these things? And then he gives the answer for each and every single one of them. The first, he placed a hole in the ship because the king was going to take everybody's ships. But if this ship was broken, then he wouldn't take it. So all he had to do was to repair it a little bit, and then he would be able to keep his own ship. The second was that this boy was going to become bad in the future, so he saved him. And the third one, my dear viewers, was that وَكَانَ أَبُوهُمَا صَالِحًا. SubhanAllah, really, really beautiful. That there are these two brothers and they have a treasure which was left to them. There are these two young orphans, two young brothers you can say, and a treasure was left to them. And it said that by what it refers to by the parent, by the father was pious, refers to a few generations up, 6 generations or so. Their great, I don't know how many great grandfather, he was pious. And just because of his piety, so many generations down the line, a prophet has come to help his children. Just because of the piety of the father who was, so many generations up. My dear viewers, we should make it a habit of ours. Yes, we should make it our habit to pray our salah, to give our zakat properly, to give sadaqah generously, to regularly pray our salah, even if you can with jamaat, to refrain from committing sins. And my dear viewers, today's lesson was to give our children a good upbringing, because our actions hugely affect our children. Whatever we do in front of them, sometimes they may think, this is just between the husband and wife. But no, these things, they rub off on the children. These things, they affect the children, and it can change a child's life. Sometimes he's always seeing his parents arguing. He's mentally, he begins to argue. They're always shouting at each other. He begins to shout. And what does this teach him in the future? That it's okay to shout at his future partner. It's okay to shout at his future wife. Then when there's these problems with relationship between the parents, then the child also can't form relationships. So this hugely impacts the child, my dear viewers. It is our duty to give our child a good upbringing. But what is a good upbringing? A good upbringing is an Islamic upbringing. Teaching love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, love for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, love for the Quran, giving them the Islamic teachings. Really, those things which are halal are halal. Those things which are haram, tell them these are haram. You must refrain from such things. And inshallah azza wa jal, when you get older, they shall respect you, they shall honor you. Anything you require, they will inshallah azza wa jal be there for you. Like nowadays where they're sending people to old homes, they don't have time for their parents. Parents, maazallah, sadly are passing away and people are discovering them, so many days later. Not like this, my dear viewers. We should give them an Islamic upbringing. Inshallah, this will benefit us. Also, we have a new topic. Inshallah, we shall continue speaking about Ghous Pak, Hazrat Abdul Qadir Jilani, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. That's all for now, but keep watching Madani Channel. Sallu ala al-Habib, sallallahu ta'ala ala Muhammad, sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi wa sallam.
By the grace of Allah, by the grace of Allah, even the darkest night will end, and the sun will rise and shine, and the sun will rise and shine. By the grace of Allah.